The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, cold and silent, shining like scattered diamonds in the black sea of space. From orbit, Earth looked fragile, a small blue and green jewel suspended in nothingness. Captain Zorath of the Thrillian Armada gazed down at the planet through the bridge's wide viewport. His eyes were sharp, calculating, filled with the certainty of victory. "A primitive species," he muttered, voice low but clear to his officers. "Easily broken, easily conquered. The humans, according to reports, were weak. Their technology was basic, their weapons primitive. Their civilization, though advanced in culture, lacked the kind of firepower the Thrillians considered necessary to challenge an empire." And yet, as Zorath stared at Earth, he felt a strange curiosity. Something about this world made him uneasy, though he dismissed it as human unpredictability, a minor annoyance before victory. On Earth, life went on unaware. Cities glowed under the warm light of evening, cars hummed along highways, and children laughed as they ran across playgrounds. Families dined together, couples walked hand in hand, and somewhere a dog barked at a passing cat. Humanity did not know the danger that hovered above them. They did not know the eyes of an alien empire were watching, judging, planning their extinction. Then, without warning, the sky changed. Massive ships descended, dark silhouettes blotting out the moon. A low hum filled the atmosphere, vibrating through oceans, forests, and mountains. Humans stopped. Their eyes lifted to the heavens. Phones were dropped. Cars screeched to a halt. Even animals sensed it, whining or fleeing in panic. And yet, amid fear, there was something unexpected. Humans did not run. They stared upward, a mixture of shock, awe, and defiance in their gaze. Inside the command center of the United Nations, President Lee stood before a wall of monitors showing the alien fleet in orbit. Calm and composed, she addressed the world. Her voice was steady, clear, and full of determination. "We do not know why they are here. We do not know what they want. But we are human, and humans do not yield." Across continents, her words were repeated, broadcasted, and whispered. Her message spread like wildfire. Fear was natural, but surrender was impossible. The aliens found this amusing. Captain Zorath laughed with his officers. "Primitive creatures afraid of the sky, yet they speak of courage? Pathetic. Soon they will kneel. Soon this world will be ours." They had no idea what they were about to face. They saw only what humans appeared to be. Fragile, weak, small. And yet Earth had something no report could measure. Spirit. In the streets below, people gathered instinctively. Parents shielded their children. Neighbors helped each other. Strangers stood together in quiet solidarity, looking up at the looming threat. Even fear was transformed into something stronger, resilience. As night deepened, the alien ships moved closer, their weapons glinting in the light of Earth. Humans prepared, not with giant armies or immense firepower, but with courage. Ordinary people, scientists, engineers, teachers, farmers, began to understand that survival would demand more than strategy. It would demand unity, hope, and relentless spirit. Captain Zorath continued to underestimate them. "They will break," he said confidently. But the first flickers of doubt had begun to stir in his mind. There was something in the human gaze, a fire he could not extinguish with his words or weapons. Something in their stillness screamed defiance louder than any scream he had heard in his long campaigns. Somewhere, in the shadowed corners of a small Earth town, a young girl watched the stars and whispered to herself, "We will not let them win." Her words were tiny, fragile, yet they carried the weight of a species ready to fight, to endure, and to refuse to yield. Unseen by the Thrillians, those words, simple, human, unbroken, would echo through the coming storm of fire and steel. The humans were about to be tested. The universe was about to witness something it had never seen before, and Earth, small and seemingly weak, held within it a secret power no alien could calculate, the unyielding heart of humanity. The Thrillian Armada waited only for the signal. From high above, their ships hovered like dark predators ready to strike. Captain Zorath's fingers tapped the console impatiently. "Begin the assault," he commanded. In an instant, beams of searing energy shot toward the cities below. Buildings shook, glass shattered, and flames erupted across the horizon. On Earth, people screamed. The sound of explosions and collapsing structures filled the air. Fires spread like rivers of anger, and the sky turned red with smoke and ash. Panic rippled through the cities. Some fled blindly while others froze, unsure where to run. But even in the chaos, something remarkable happened. Humanity did not surrender. Engineers, teachers, and students, ordinary people, ran to the streets, helping neighbors out of collapsing buildings. Firefighters and police worked tirelessly, even when the sky was streaked with fire and falling debris. "We do not yield," shouted a man as he carried an injured child across a burning street. His words were heard by dozens who repeated them, forming a chorus of defiance. The human military responded as best they could. Their weapons were weak compared to the Thrillian technology, yet they fought with precision, ingenuity, and bravery. Jets darted between alien energy beams, missiles found their targets, and even the smallest fighter planes became deadly traps. Captain Zorath watched in disbelief as one young pilot, no older than 17, maneuvered through laser fire and destroyed an entire alien scout ship. "Impossible," Zorath muttered. "They are too coordinated, too fearless." Civilians did not simply hide, they adapted. Families used vehicles to block streets, creating barricades. Engineers improvised explosives from factories, sending them toward alien drones. Even children played roles, warning others of approaching fire or danger. Every human became part of the resistance, connected by an unspoken understanding. Their survival depended on unity, courage, and refusal to submit. Meanwhile, in the United Nations bunker, President Lee coordinated the defense. Her calm voice cut through panic over every communication channel. "Hold your ground. Protect each other. Remember who you are. We are human, and humans do not yield." Those words, simple yet powerful, traveled across the globe. People repeated them aloud in basements, hospitals, and shelters, drawing strength from the certainty that they were not alone. Despite the humans' courage, the Thrillians were relentless. Cities crumbled, communication lines broke, and the planet itself seemed to groan under the weight of the attack. Zorath's ships moved in perfect formation, striking with deadly efficiency. He believed victory was inevitable. Every fallen human, he thought, was proof of their weakness. But humans were unlike any species he had conquered before. Every loss sparked determination. Every strike against them was met with adaptation, innovation, and courage. Fires became traps for alien drones. Collapsed streets became obstacles for enemy soldiers. And survivors learned quickly, turning fear into fuel. In a small town outside New York, a group of survivors huddled in the ruins of a school. Among them was an old man, gray-haired and weary, who whispered, "They may destroy our buildings, our machines, our cities, but they cannot destroy our hearts. We do not yield." His words, carried from one person to another, became a quiet promise that refused to be silenced. Above Earth, Captain Zorath watched as yet another of his ships fell to a human strike. His pride, arrogance, and certainty began to crack. The humans fought not because they were armed, but because they believed in something deeper, a connection to each other, to their home, and to the very spirit of survival. As night fell, the fires illuminated the cities like scars on the planet's surface. And still humanity stood, injured, exhausted, but unbroken. They were terrified, yes, but fear did not bend their will. Every shout of "We do not yield" echoed across the streets, across the mountains, across the oceans, and somehow into the hearts of the aliens above. The Thrillians had attacked expecting obedience. They had assumed humans would break. They had assumed victory was theirs. But they were wrong. Very, very wrong. Earth had awakened, and with it, a truth the universe had not yet understood. When humans are cornered, when their homes are threatened, when their survival is on the line, they fight with everything they are. And they never ever yield. The morning after the first strike, Earth was scarred and smoky, but the people were awake, unbroken, and defiant. Cities had fallen, buildings burned, and the air was thick with ash and fear. But the humans were not defeated. They moved through the ruins, their eyes hardened with determination. Every step they took was a statement. They would not surrender. From orbit, the Thrillian emissaries observed the planet, confused by the resilience they saw. Captain Zorath scowled as he studied the reports from the battle. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They should be begging for mercy. They should be crumbling under our power." His officers shifted nervously. The humans were not behaving as any conquered species ever had. On Earth, survivors began organizing themselves. Scientists who had once studied stars now worked to understand alien technology. Engineers converted factories into workshops, creating weapons with whatever they could find. Soldiers and volunteers trained together, teaching civilians how to defend themselves. Everyone had a role and everyone contributed. The planet had become a single organism, united in purpose. President Lee stood in the ruins of the United Nations building, addressing a crowd of soldiers, volunteers, and civilians alike. Her voice was calm but firm, resonating through the rubble. They thought we were weak. They thought fear would make us yield. But we are human. Every loss we endure makes us stronger. Every strike we survive makes us wiser. And no matter what they do, we will never surrender. Her words spread like fire. Across continents, humans repeated them aloud, and in their hearts, we do not yield. It became more than a phrase. It became a rallying cry, a promise, a shield against despair. People who had once quarreled with neighbors now worked side by side, sharing food, water, and courage. Fear still existed, but it was tempered by unity, purpose, and hope. The Thrillians tried to negotiate, sending glowing emissaries to the cities. "Surrender now, humans," they demanded. "Your planet will belong to us." "Resistance is pointless." President Lee stepped forward, her eyes meeting the alien light without fear. "We will not surrender. We will fight and we will endure. You may have power, but you do not understand us. Humans fight not only for themselves but for each other, for our world, for our future. Attack us and you will find we are unstoppable." The aliens laughed at her words, a cold, hollow sound. But even in their amusement, a flicker of fear crept into Zorath's mind. The humans were unpredictable. They were united, and they were fighting with a determination no weapon could erase. Across the planet, humans began striking back in unexpected ways. Satellites were hacked, feeding false information into alien sensors. Factories were turned into traps. Even natural landscapes, mountains, forests, rivers, became tools of defense. Every attack from the Thrillians was met with ingenuity, adaptation, and fierce resolve. Zorath watched helplessly as another of his elite ships was destroyed by an ambush humans had planned using salvaged alien technology. "They are learning," he muttered. "They are adapting faster than any species should be able to." His officers began to whisper among themselves. Doubt had entered the minds of conquerors who had never known fear before. On Earth, the people mourned their dead, but they also celebrated their victories, no matter how small. Every life saved, every ship destroyed, every neighborhood protected was a testament to human resilience. Parents clutched their children tighter. Friends held hands across rubble. Strangers shared water and shelter. And every night under the smoke-filled sky, they repeated the words that had become their lifeline. "We do not yield." Zorath realized the truth too late. Humans were unlike any species he had faced. They were not merely fighters, they were guardians of each other, defenders of home and masters of survival. Every strike made them stronger, every loss made them wiser. And that, more than any weapon, more than any ship or fleet, was what terrified him. The aliens had expected obedience. They had expected fear. But humans had given them something entirely unexpected: resistance. Not resistance out of logic or strategy or fear, but resistance born of heart, spirit, and unbreakable unity. And as night fell on the battered cities, one thing was certain. The Thrillians had awakened a force in humanity that could not be ignored. A force that would not bow, would not falter, and would never ever yield. Weeks passed since the first strike, and the skies over Earth were still filled with alien ships. Fires still burned in the cities and smoke rose from crumbled buildings. Yet despite all the destruction, humanity had not given in. Every day they grew stronger, more organized, and more determined. What had begun as scattered survival was now a coordinated resistance. Captain Zorath stared at the reports coming from Earth and his fleet. Each update was worse than the last. Ships destroyed, bases sabotaged, humans striking back in ways he had never imagined. He had fought countless species, conquered dozens of planets, and crushed rebellions before. But the humans were different. They learned fast, adapted, and fought with an energy that defied logic. On Earth, people had begun to understand the alien technology. Scientists studied the weapons that had fallen to the planet, reverse engineering them into tools of defense. Engineers transformed factories into workshops, creating weapons and vehicles capable of challenging the alien fleet. Soldiers trained civilians in combat techniques. Communities fortified cities, rivers, and mountains. Every citizen had a purpose, and every act of courage strengthened their collective will. In the streets of New York, A group of volunteers carried debris to form barricades, while others treated the injured. Children ran errands, warning neighbors of approaching danger. Farmers provided food for those who had fled their homes. Every human, no matter age or skill, became a defender. And every defender carried the same message: we do not yield. President Lee moved among the survivors, offering words of comfort and guidance. Her voice was calm, steady, and inspiring. The aliens believe their power makes them unstoppable, she said. But they do not understand the human heart. Our strength does not come from weapons alone. It comes from our courage, our unity, and our refusal to surrender. They may destroy our cities, but they will never destroy our spirit. Captain Zorath, observing from his flagship, could not understand it. Humans seemed to thrive under pressure. Every attack he launched was met with counterattacks, clever traps, and unrelenting defiance. They adapted faster than any species he had faced, and each defeat they suffered only seemed to make them stronger. The turning point came during the battle over the Pacific Ocean. A massive alien cruiser descended to crush a human naval fleet. Thousands of humans were ready to face annihilation, yet instead of running, they attacked with precision. Ships improvised from cargo vessels and fishing boats moved in coordinated patterns. Missiles built from salvaged alien technology struck the cruiser's weak points. Explosions lit the sky like fireflies, and the cruiser, the pride of the Thrillian Armada, began to crumble. Zorath watched in disbelief as humans cheered, even in the midst of chaos. For the first time, he understood that their fight was not just about survival, it was about defiance. Every human who stood to protect others, every human who refused to give in, became a symbol of resistance. That symbol spread across the planet, fueling hope and courage in millions of hearts. In a small town on the outskirts of the city, survivors gathered in the ruins of a school. They lit fires, shared food, and cared for the wounded. An old woman held a child in her arms and whispered, "We will rise. We always rise." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of generations. The young boy nodded, gripping her hand. Even amidst destruction, hope endured. Captain Zorath could no longer ignore the truth. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and united. Their strength was not in their weapons, but in their hearts. Every attack against them seemed only to sharpen their resolve. He realized with growing fear that humanity had become something he could not easily crush. Across the galaxy, the news of Earth's resilience began to spread. Other civilizations watched in awe and fear. Humans were not merely surviving. They were fighting back in ways no one had imagined. And they were winning, not because of power, but because they refused to surrender. The Thrillians had underestimated their opponents. They had expected obedience, fear, and defeat. Instead, they faced something far more dangerous. A species that could not be broken. A species whose spirit blazed brighter with every attack. Humanity had shown the universe that their greatest months had passed since the first attack, and Earth was no longer merely surviving. It was preparing to fight back. The humans had learned quickly, using every resource at their disposal. Factories once building cars now built weapons. Satellites once studying weather now tracked alien movements. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked side by side, turning fear into action. The people of Earth were no longer prey. They were hunters. Captain Zorath observed from orbit as human fleets gathered. Small ships, once ordinary civilian vessels, had been retrofitted with weapons capable of striking the alien armada. Missiles, shields, and energy disruptors, all improvised from a combination of human technology and stolen alien schematics, lined the docks. What the Thrillians had dismissed as primitive ingenuity was now a terrifying reality. Humans were ready. On the surface, President Lee addressed the planet in a broadcast that reached every corner of Earth. Her voice carried hope, courage, and determination. They thought fear would make us bow. They thought power alone could break us, but they forgot one truth: we are human. Every strike they have made against us has made us stronger. Every loss has made us wiser. Today we take the fight to them. We do not yield. The counteroffensive began quietly, with precise strikes against alien supply lines and communication hubs. Humans moved like shadows, avoiding direct confrontation when possible. But when they attacked, they struck with calculated force. Entire alien scouting fleets were destroyed before the Thrillians even knew they had been detected. The humans had learned their enemies' weaknesses, adapted faster than any species could, and now they used that knowledge to turn the tide. Captain Zorath's arrogance had begun to crumble. He had believed humans were fragile, predictable, and weak, yet they were neither fragile nor predictable. They were relentless, fearless, and united. Every attack they launched was coordinated, every movement clever, every victory amplifying their resolve. His fleet, once confident, now SEs at an alarming rate. Ships that should have crushed human defenses were being torn apart by ingenious tactics and sheer audacity. On Earth, ordinary people became heroes. Civilians drove transports loaded with explosives into alien supply lines. Engineers sabotaged drones with makeshift EMPs. Soldiers led daring raids into alien camps. Each action, no matter how small, contributed to the larger battle. Every act of courage inspired others, creating a chain reaction that spread across continents. In the skies above the Atlantic, a human fleet, composed mostly of retrofitted cargo ships and fishing boats, engaged a massive Thrillian cruiser. Using hit-and-run tactics, they struck repeatedly at weak points, luring the cruiser into a trap. When the ship finally exploded in a cascade of fire and debris, humans cheered, not only for the victory but because they had proven something important. No enemy, no matter how powerful, could intimidate them. Captain Zorath watched helplessly. He had faced resistance before, but never like this. Humans were not only fighting, they were thinking, adapting, sacrificing, and inspiring. Every loss the Thrillians inflicted only hardened their spirit. Every victory only emboldened them. They were not merely soldiers. They were symbols of defiance, of unity, of life itself. Across the globe, people rebuilt what was destroyed even as they fought. Cities became fortresses. Farms became supply lines. Families worked together to protect each other. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, had a role. Every heart beat with courage. Every mind thought of ways to survive, to fight, to win. Zorath realized the truth he had been avoiding. Humans were not just resisting, they were unstoppable. Their power did not lie in technology or numbers, but in their spirit. They fought not for domination, not for conquest, but for each other, for their planet, for their survival. And in that unity, in that courage, lay a strength no alien could calculate, no weapon could destroy. The human counteroffensive was no longer just a response. It was a declaration. Across the galaxy, whispers of Earth's defiance began to spread. Humans were no longer seen as a minor planet to conquer. They were a force, unyielding, unbreakable, and filled with heart. And in every battle, every strike, every shout of "We do not yield," the Thrillians learned a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was not to be underestimated, and if attacked again, they would fight until the last breath, until the last spark, and still never yield. The alien fleet, battered and confused, hovered above Earth like a storm that refused to pass. Ships had fallen, commanders had died, and morale among the Thrillians was crumbling. Captain Zorath could no longer hide his fear. Every tactic he had used before had failed. Every strike had been met with clever resistance. Humanity was no longer merely surviving. They were thriving in defiance. On Earth, people prepared for what they knew might be the final battle. Cities were fortified. Families gathered together, sharing food, water, and courage. Soldiers trained tirelessly. Civilians helped wherever they could, and children, though frightened, were taught to hide, to survive, and to hope. Every person understood one thing: surrender was not an option. They would fight to the last breath, and even then, their spirit would not yield. President Lee stood on the highest remaining building in the city, addressing her people. Her voice was steady, carrying through loudspeakers, radios, and broadcasts. They have underestimated us for too long. They have thought fear could break us, fire could destroy us, and power could crush us. But we are human. Every challenge we face makes us stronger. Every strike we survive teaches us courage, and no matter what happens, we do not yield. Across the globe, humans responded. Fires lit the night sky, not in destruction, but in defense. Missiles streaked toward alien ships. Soldiers ran into battle knowing they might not return. Yet their eyes were steady, hearts resolute. Communities worked as one. Strangers became family. Hope became a weapon stronger than any gun. Captain Zorath watched as another Thrillian cruiser was destroyed by a human trap. The humans had anticipated their moves, adapted faster than he could respond, and fought with precision he had never seen. Panic spread among his officers. "They are unstoppable," one whispered. Zorath clenched his fists. The humans were relentless, their courage unmatched, their determination absolute. In the streets, humans fought not only for survival, but for each other. A young soldier carried a wounded comrade across rubble, bullets whizzing past them. Civilians rescued children from burning buildings. Even the elderly, weak by age, helped where they could, guiding others, sharing supplies, offering encouragement. Every act, no matter how small, became part of a larger fight, a fight for their home, for life, for dignity. Zorath realized the truth he had refused to see. Humans did not fight for themselves alone. They fought for each other, for every life, every home, every dream. Their unity, their empathy, their courage made them unstoppable, and that strength no weapon could destroy. The skies above the Pacific lit up as humans executed a coordinated strike. Swarms of retrofitted ships attacked the remaining alien vessels with precision. Energy beams, missiles, and EMPs tore through the enemy fleet. Even as some humans fell, others surged forward, filling the gaps, carrying the fight onward. Every victory, every stand amplified the courage of those still standing. On a hill outside the city, an old man watched the battle. His eyes were weary, his body tired, but his heart was full. He whispered, "We may fall, but we will rise always." Children nearby repeated his words, their small voices firm against the roar of destruction. Every human alive carried the same resolve. They would not yield. Zorath's fleet, now broken and demoralized, retreated. They had underestimated humanity, and they had learned a dangerous lesson. Humans did not merely resist, they adapted, they inspired, and they endured. They were more than soldiers. They were a force of life itself, unyielding, unbreakable. As the alien ships fled into the void, humans cheered. The night sky, once darkened with smoke and fear, now shimmered with the light of fires and hope. Though scars remained on Earth, the people were unbowed. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger, wiser, and united. President Lee addressed the survivors one final time that night. They thought power could break us. They thought fear could stop us. But humans do not yield. We fight, we endure, and no matter what comes, we rise together. Somewhere in the ruins, a young girl whispered to her brother, holding his hand tightly, "We are human, and we never give up." Her words carried the promise of a future forged from courage, sacrifice, and unbreakable spirit. Humanity had survived the storm, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to surrender. And in that refusal lay the true power of the species, the heart of humanity, eternal and unyielding. Years had passed since the skies over Earth had burned with the fire of alien fleets. Cities had been rebuilt, forests had grown back, and oceans had calmed. Yet the memory of the war remained alive in every heart, every stone, every story. Humanity had survived the impossible, not through superior technology alone, but through courage, unity, and an unyielding spirit. Captain Zorath's name was no longer spoken among the Thrillians with pride. It was spoken with caution, fear, and disbelief. His fleet had retreated in defeat, and whispers of Earth's defiance spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations, some distant, some near, learned quickly. The humans were not to be underestimated. A species that refused to yield could not be conquered. On Earth, life returned, but differently. People looked to the skies not with fear, but with understanding. They had faced annihilation and emerged stronger, wiser, and united. Children played beneath the same stars that had once been filled with alien shadows, but now laughter returned where there had been silence. Families rebuilt homes, communities rebuilt trust, and scientists explored the universe with a caution that came from knowing both its beauty and its danger. President Lee, older now but still strong in spirit, addressed the world. "We survived because we stood together. We survived because we believed in each other. And we survived because no matter how dark the storm, humanity never yields." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of generations and the pride of a species that had faced extinction and refused to bow. Across the globe, monuments were built not to weapons but to courage. Statues depicted ordinary humans, a firefighter carrying a child, a soldier helping a neighbor, a scientist creating a weapon from scraps. Every figure represented the truth that victory had not come from machines alone, but from hearts, minds, and unbreakable will. In the universities and schools, children learned the story of the Thrillian attack. They learned not to fear the stars, but to respect them. They learned that courage could light the darkest night, and that unity could withstand the strongest storm. Every lesson reinforced the truth that had saved humanity. They would never yield. The galaxy watched. Rumors of Earth's defiance spread like wildfire. Armadas from distant worlds reconsidered their strategies. Scholars debated in distant star systems whether any species could match the human heart. The message was clear, unspoken but understood. Attack humans, and you would face a force that could not be broken. And yet, humans did not celebrate hatred. They did not seek revenge. They had survived, yes, but they had also grown. They built alliances with friendly civilizations,